Welcome to this episode. In emerging and fast-growing franchise concepts, to no fault of anybody, it's very easy for a first-time franchisee to fall through the cracks. A franchisor may be opening in 10 different markets in the same month, and this alone makes it almost impossible for a franchisor to provide standardized real estate systems to its franchisees. It actually results in each franchisee making unforeseen first-time mistakes that can be prevented. And with me today is Scott Simcik. Scott is President and CEO of FGP Commercial Leasing, and he's a recognized expert in franchise real estate. Scott's got over 3 decades of experience in the field and has helped hundreds of businesses avoid these pitfalls. So I'm honored that he's with me. Scott, I'm so delighted you're here. Welcome. Tell your audience a little about you and FGP.
Ken, thank you so much for this conversation today. I'm just honored to be with you and a part of this wonderful program that Paul Bosley is putting together for candidates in purchasing a franchise. And Paul, I've known for 25 years, a funding expert, just an honor. My background very quickly, I've been in franchise real estate for the last 32 years, worked with over 1,000 first-time and multi-unit franchisees. We only specialize in franchise real estate. So we've perfected the technology, the process, the team environment. And so it's an honor to be here. Thank you.
Well, I'm delighted. I know that over the next few minutes, you'll impart some really great wisdom based on those decades of experience. So let's get things started. What's the very first thing a franchisee should know?
Great question, Ken. Thank you. The main thing I think we get lost in a little bit is all the first-time franchisees are sort of in their mind going location, location, location. Mm-hmm. That's average at best for any major chain, the Gap, a major restaurant chain. It's more about return on investment and profitability. In order to achieve those two goals, the real essence of that is location quality, number one, reducing your startup costs in the process, and having a great rent-to-sales ratio. Those 3 things together are the glue to really achieving a tremendous return on investment for a franchisee. And unfortunately, in many franchise systems, the fast-growing ones, they don't know where their next 10 franchises are going to be in any state. So very difficult for them to standardize the real estate process. Mm-hmm. So where a big chain would have those systems perfected, fast-growing franchisors struggle with that. And so just simply because of that issue alone. And so for us, we think that every franchisee deserves to open that franchise location as if it were corporately owned, and all the same disciplines, standardization, execution. And so that's what we pride ourselves both caringly and passionately to do. And so hopefully that sheds a little light on that, Ken.
Hey, Scott, thanks very much. So with location being so important, what are some of the biggest mistakes that a franchisee must avoid at all costs?
You bet. Another great question. The big mistakes in franchise real estate really depend. You've got site selection and search, which is a different component. Then you have financial negotiations. Then you have legal review. And then once your lease is signed, you've sort of got that pre-construction. So it really depends on what portion of the process you'd like to reference.
Okay, so then let's start with the site search and selection and the financial negotiations, okay?
Fantastic. So the first biggest mistake that we work with and we coach our clients on in the site search and selection is temperament. Of all things, it has nothing to do with real estate. It's all about temperament. And very, very often, temperament can lead our emotions to go in different directions. So want to put a little caution to temperament. Allow me to give you a brief example. Over the 30 years of doing this, we've worked with, like I said, over 1,000 first-time franchisees, and generally speaking, everybody has this demeanor: I've got to be enthusiastic or aggressive to be successful at self-employed. And while that's true, that's very true, unlike any other thing, site search and selection, you'd want to step back and be unemotional. So it's a whole different psychological, emotional makeup. Example, 4 out of every 10, 400 of 1,000 of our franchisees will be very enthusiastic. The other 40% will be over aggressive. So you've got this one extreme of being too enthusiastic, this another one of being over aggressive. And what happens in the enthusiasm, the eagerness during the process, Ken, is typically what will happen is you'll drive around, you'll fall in love with one location, you'll marry it, and now you're in a situation where the landlord listing agent sort of has you pegged. He's read those emotions, those intentions, that eagerness, and you're not really experiencing commercial real estate. All of a sudden, you're paying market rate. You're paying for the landlord capital improvements. You're not maximizing your tenant improvements. And you've overpaid in your startup costs. You've overpaid in your rent. And that's the problem with falling in love and marrying one location. We always coach our client. We say one means none. We have no leverage. We're going to overpay on rent and startup costs. So thank you for that question. The other side of it is typically in LA, Miami, New York, Southern New York, we have very much over aggressive, tenacious, highly competitive sort of environments. And unfortunately, the typical emotion of being too aggressive, getting in your car, driving around, and all of a sudden you fall in love with 3 locations. And then your next step, you're tempted, you see the pylon sign, you see Bill Smith, Mary Jones, you pick that phone up, you can't help it, you call them. Immediately you've dove right into the landlord sales net, and now you're doing a walkthrough and you're saying things, and landlords are so sharp. That's why they have listing agents out in front of them, shielding them. They're 2 steps ahead of this emotionality, this tenacity, this eagerness, and they always take advantage of the more aggressive. I can't even tell you how often in Los Angeles, Miami, and New York, even in market rate comparison, first-time franchisees and even multi-unit will pay much more than market rate, pay for the landlord capital improvements, not get the tenant improvement dollars, and it always because they were driving around, called the pylon sign, jumped right into the sales net, and the landlord was 2 steps ahead. In fact, they lose more money than the eager ones in the process. So unfortunately, with that tenacity, you're sort of the mindset you're going to represent yourself. And what happens on a walkthrough, you start saying things, the eager franchisee says, will you move my bathroom over there? Well, immediately a landlord listing agent's done 500 walkthroughs. They can tell that you've emotionally leased the space if you're eager. And then the tenacious franchisee is going to say, how much build out? What's your rent? Going to start getting commitments, and then we can't unwind those commitments. And all of a sudden, a franchisee who's aggressive, thinking they're representing themselves, all of a sudden, thinking they're saving $1, is giving back $10 to the landlord. And so we can't really help them. But again, this all goes back to temperament in the process. And so the main key, what we call our secret sauce, is leverage. Leverage means you've got 3 locations. They're 1A, 1B, and 1C. They're all your number 1 horses. You've done effective walkthroughs. Now you're moving into negotiating, and now you've got leverage to reduce your startup costs and also to reduce your rent. That's where return on investment and profitability really shines through. So again, really, really, temperament is the biggest mistake. I hope that helps a little bit.
That certainly does. I mean, it's so clear that you're an expert in the field, and you've brought up quite a few points that I, as a layperson, would never have even thought of. So let's move ahead. Let's talk now about what kind of financial mistakes should a franchisee avoid as they negotiate, say, a letter of intent?
You know, my heart goes out. I've been doing this for 30 years. And I always say, you know, my clients will say, Scott, gosh, you're the expert. And I say, no, it's not about being the expert. There are a lot of great dentists and licensed professionals, attorneys, and CPAs. It's really about being caring. When somebody's a husband and wife or an executive leaving a corporate job, or they've got an inheritance or borrowing money or a partner, you know, it's really caring deeply, deeply about that dream and that business and that self-employed journey. And so it starts with being caring. And what I always share with my owners, you know, in franchise real estate is 9 out of 10 franchisees will pay more than they thought they would when they open their business, but it's all, they've been asked to do it on their own. They go out and they find a local broker, and you got the blind leading the blind. And unfortunately, franchisors, again, because they're opening in so many different markets, they can't standardize the process. So what typically happens is not really a mistake, Ken. It's when you don't know what you don't know, it's what hurts you the most in any aspects of life. You know, marriage, friendships, business. When you don't know what you don't know, this is what really hurts you financially. And I want to be an advocate and shield first-time and multi-unit franchisees from things they don't know in commercial real estate. The first thing I would say to you is that, you know, local brokers, when you've got a local broker, there's this local politics whereby you're working with a CB Rich, a Collier's, a Cushman Wakefield. You think they're a great national brand and they've got 500 offices, and you're driving up and down the street. You see that same name up and down the corridor on those signs, and you're going, well, this person knows this area. See that same name on the corridor. Well, what you don't know is that their firm has national listing agreements with national institutional REITs, landlords, and even in their own office with landlords, they have listing agreements. So first and foremost, these agents work for the landlords. They have a fiduciary responsibility by these contracts to protect the financial interests of the landlord on all levels. And yet they meet you as a first-time franchisee. You're sort of led to, you know, the landlord, they're here to help, but their obligation is to the landlord financially. You're a transaction. Number two, within a commercial real estate office, doesn't matter how big it is, every commercial leasing agent in there is an independent contractor, a sales agent. So they're going to show their listings first. They're out there sourcing their listings with a retail, an office, a medical building. They get that listing. They're prideful of it. They're going to show you that one. And they have no legal or moral obligation to show any of the other listings in their office from the other 30 agents in their office. And that's hard for me, and that's why you feel my passion for protecting my franchisees. It's not right to think that a first-time franchisee meets a commercial leasing agent, thinks they're being helped, and literally they'll be showing you 5 or 6 spots, and the person next to them has a better location, a better listing, and they're not obligated to show it. Not right. Not right. So I want to honor the commercial real estate industry, but I want to respectfully call it out on its core values and transparency. And unfortunately, what happens, Ken, in this situation is a franchisee suffers because now they're with that one commercial leasing agent, and the minute they say, I know that agent or I know that landlord, that should be a red flag. Red flag. Red flag means that if they know the landlord, they've done 30 transactions prior to you and going to do 30 more, or they know the agent, that's not an advantage to you. That means you are one transaction and you will pay market rates. They're going to say, well, in this market, on this street, I know that landlord. I've been many transactions. You're going to pay, this is the market rate. I can't remember using the word market rate in my career. There's no such thing as market rate in commercial real estate. One shopping center here is paid off with a local owner, and this one's a REIT that just paid 10 times more than it's worth, and it's reflected in property taxes and rental rates. And so this one may be $2, this one's $3.50, and they're sitting right next to each other. So they're unique transactions. But that's the main thing I want you to know is that when you're negotiating That's when I say you better be cautious. You've got sort of the fox protecting the hen house. Secondly, you're going to be led to believe the way commercial real estate is conducted, that the agent's going to sit down with you and write a letter of intent. We call it writing an offer, a letter of intent. And then we're going to submit that to the landlord's listing agent or the landlord. Do you know that would be like a lieutenant in the military sending a first-line front row soldier to battle? Forward, right into an instant death. You would never send a blind letter of intent, email it over to the landlord without more information about where you're sending your soldiers. And so one of the most disheartening things to me is, well, let's sit down and write an offer. Yeah, you know why you want to write an offer, because you want market rate. You know the landlord's not going to give us tenant improvements. The landlord wants us to pay for the capital improvements. So another, what I call inner politics that we want to protect you from. One of the things I tell everybody, think about it for a moment. Never negotiate your financial condition with a landlord, what you want, build out, free rent, asking rent, capital improvements, with a local agent. Always negotiate with somebody who has no ties to the local politics of the agents or the landlords. And last but not least, when you're making these, you wouldn't have no way of knowing this, but when you fall in love with a location and you're working with a commercial leasing agent, they want you to have that spot. They're not going to tell you that you should be negotiating on 3 at one time. They're just not going to say, we need leverage. We need 1A, 1B, and 1C down this corridor. They want you to have that offer. They submit the offer. There's 3 other letters of intent on that property. Your first-time franchisee is waiting 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7 weeks, thinking you're going to get it. You lose it. Now you're starting all over again, and you have no leverage. You have one location, so you're going to keep bidding the price up. So, Ken, these are all of the things when negotiating. The way that we do it, just very, very plainly, I won't negotiate lease unless I have a pre-letter of intent call after a walkthrough where the franchisee is on the phone, the landlord listing agent's on the phone. In 30 years of 1,000 locations, I've not once ever negotiated a lease without the franchisee listening to every single word of the 30 questions that I ask that agent. And the reason I do that is I think we're all deserving, we're putting our life savings on the line, of transparency, inside understanding, never second guessing intentions, experience, and me asking questions so that my first-time franchisee or multi-unit franchisee has the leverage of control, and they're listening to see how much money they would have lost had they let some local agent just submit a blind letter of intent. So this transparency is where you reduce your startup costs, where you save all of your money and your build out, your rent. But unfortunately, I think we're the only company in the United States that believes in what's called a transparent conversation, inviting the franchisee into the call. So forgive my passion, but it comes out of love to protect you, my client.
Yeah, your passion comes through loud and clear, and it's just shows how important it is to have someone like you for someone who's getting into franchising for the first time. Commercial property search technology seems to have replaced the need for local agents. We've all gotten so used to doing online search and wasting time driving in and out of properties. Is that true? I mean, is commercial search taking the place of local agents?
It's a great, great point. I always get asked by franchisors, by franchisees, get asked all the time, well, you don't know the market. 10 to 12 years ago, technology replaced that whole idea. Today, sort of like residential real estate, the clients know more about real estate than the commercial leasing agents. That's how far technology has brought every industry. So what that means is today, just like a multiple listing, we carry a piece of software. It's $100,000 a year. I pay substantially less, but every zip code in America, it's scientific. Like a neighborhood has 70 homes for lease or for rent. We can take any new construction property rendering that's been approved by the city, any retail shopping center of any level, any medical office, any office, industrial flex, piece of land, and we can build through technology today what we call an advanced site package. And then in that site package, I can create a video of the entire space, all your competitors around it plotted, all of the shadow anchors, if you like a Whole Foods or a Starbucks or a Panera or whatever you like around your location. Then we can show you the demographics, 1, 3, and 5 miles, who the landlord is, who the tenants are, the terms of their lease, the property taxes on the building. And we're doing this in 2 or 3 trade areas, 30 minutes from an owner's home, northeast, west, south. And so we do search, their initial protected territory, but I always say to our franchisees, my technology is so strong, allow me to do the adjacent searches without going over somebody's territory. And what we'll do is we'll build 3 trade areas, and a site package could have 40 locations in one, 50 in another, 60 in another. And because we put them on video, and then we have 2 pages to support the video, they can shortlist in a day their must-sees. They can go through 50 properties in 20 seconds in a video, and they'll say, I know that one, I know that one, I know that one. And now they're shortlisting down to the must-sees, and then they take the maybes, and then they take the discards. But would you rather have a franchisee in Atlanta or Houston or Chicago or LA driving around, falling in love with 3 locations and missing the other 97% of the properties? A commercial leasing agent, the minute they know you like the spot, you're emotional about it, and I have to be there, they're not going to show you the other 97. They wouldn't even put this package together. So I want to tell you that driving up and down the street in and out of a shopping center is long gone. Today, technology allows us to look at 100% of the properties in that neighborhood, short you list you down to 10 or 15, your top 20. Now your leverage and your startup costs are protected, because now our site search specialist calls every one of those top 20. We call the landlord, the square footage, the use, the zoning, the asking rent, the triple net, common area maintenance, any restrictions or exclusives. We'll call those 20 owners, agents, and get you down to your top 7. Well, now in your top 7, we then coach our clients how to do effective walkthroughs. And I always say your walkthrough is your transition point to reducing your startup cost and your rent. The minute you have a leasing agent who does 500 walkthroughs waiting for you, the landlord listing agent, the fox protecting the landlord, look out, look out. If you're eager, would you put my bathroom over there? And can I get free rent, or can I get lower rent? The minute you're aggressive, and the minute you're sort of emotional and you're sort of leading them on, because they're going to crack you open. If it's a small, rural, medium town, your friends go to church, your friends, your family, I know them, sorority, fraternity. Little do you know, their legal responsibility is to protect the landlord from spending any money. This technology, Ken, that you bring up, technology has replaced the need for a local broker today. And then the effectiveness of the steps and then negotiating is how we reduce the real startup costs and the real rent.
Hey, Scott, you're providing information that I know people haven't really even thought of. As you said earlier, what you don't know. Let's move on, and let me ask you this question. Once the landlord and the franchisee agree on financial terms of a letter of intent, what can they expect and what can they avoid?
Great question. As soon as that letter of intent is it's non-binding, but all the financial terms, 80% of them are all negotiated. Try to move everything in that letter of intent, all the financial things that are critical, and leave that remaining lease contract on the contractual terms. And real estate brokers should never read a lease, a contract, and practice law. We integrate the letter of intent terms to make sure there's no omissions in the lease. I would tell you the last 200 leases, we have a running joke in our office. 99% have not incorporated the LOI into the lease accurately. It's just amazing. Clerical, admin, outsourced attorneys, brokers, and then you get a lease back, and it's not all included. But the main thing I'd like to caution my clients about is they're a little bit excited, a little bit tired. We went through this exciting journey together, and they just want to read it and sign it. Or the worst part is they'll have what I call a friend who's an attorney, non-specialized in franchise or banking or commercial leases, but they're a lawyer. And so it'd be sort of like going to a criminal lawyer to look at a commercial lease, So the biggest mistake I feel of saving a few dollars is they'll get a friend who's an attorney or a family member, and then all of a sudden everybody's in good spirits to help each other out. And all of a sudden 8 weeks have went by, red lines, everybody's polarized. the two attorneys are fighting. They're trying to renegotiate the terms. And in an effort to save time and money, the franchisee is almost lost this property that everybody's worked so hard. And so it's just not worth saving a little bit of money. That contract could be 30 pages, 40 pages, 90 pages. I just want to caution us in that leasing, not to go out and get a friend or try to read it yourself because you're excited or you can save it first. That is a disaster in the making. So hopefully that helps a little bit.
Hey, Scott, this is really great information again. But now, once the location and the lease are finalized, now what?
Great question, Ken. You know, when you sign your lease, you're excited. Everybody's sort of celebrating a little bit, a little glass of wine or your favorite beverage. And I always say, you know, once it's signed, this is what we call the now what. The now what do I do? So this is what we call a pre-construction phase. And the most important thing I'd like to offer up to you is that all of your mistakes will happen before you ever lift a hammer. So just keep in mind when you sign a lease that everything we're going to do for the next 60 or 90 days in pre-construction is really all your mistakes of overspending will happen right here. We go through the rent, the startup cost, all the leasing. So in this pre-construction, the franchise industry doesn't have a lot of what I call inside understanding of pre-construction, doesn't really have a way of disseminating this on a local level to its franchisees. And essentially what we do is we call the city technicians to minimize the time and dollars to determine what kind of architectural plans, how do you submit, how do you pull architectural plans. We interview 9 architects, getting it down to 4, getting it down to 1 solid architect that's affordable, fast. We know they've got a great relationship with the city. One of the things that I offer with everybody, and it's such a shocking surprise to franchisees, but we've interviewed hundreds of architects in our career. And do you know that 90% of all architects will tell you they've never worked with a first-time franchisee? We think it's every day. They're doing schools, they're doing residential, they're doing grocery stores, chains of work. They're not doing one-off, inline, small interior jobs or restaurants. So it's new for them too. They don't know a thing about the franchisor. They don't understand the psychology, the excitement, and they don't have a thing about the floor plan. Last but not least, with regards to the general contractors, the big takeaway here is if you have a friend or a family member, please make them 1 and 4 estimates. The biggest mistake first-time franchisees make is they'll do cost estimates with a friend or 2 early, and they'll get overestimated 30 to 40% because they're not giving the GC detailed information and architectural drawings. And genuinely, the only way to get accurate prices, 95% of material and labor, is the first revisions from the city is the optimal point to give all 4 GCs. So if that GC thinks and knows they're the only one and they've overestimated you on walkthrough, you're going to pay 30 to 40% more and you're not going to have 4 GCs. What we do is we compare those 4 GCs, we give them all the same bid package, transfer to an Excel spreadsheet. The main takeaway when we're looking at it is we look for all of the soft money, the general conditions, special situations, all of the exclusions, clarifications, extra employees on the job. And you wouldn't believe when you're comparing 4 cost estimates, you know, how much money GCs will overcharge franchisees. So this pre-construction is so important so that you don't open up. You don't want to say, Ken, you know what, it was my first location. We made all these mistakes. We overspent. You know, we didn't understand pre-construction. The whole idea is to see and prevent overspending so you don't have to say, I won't do it on my second location. So we think pre-construction is an incredible voluntary program. Last but not least, the way we get paid, again, franchisors don't pay us a thing and franchisees don't pay us. Landlords pay their listing agents 4 or 5 or 6% in their contracts. When we bring our client, you, the franchisee, they cooperate with us. We're representing you. They're representing their landlord. And then when they get paid from their landlord on the base aggregate lease, not anything else, now all of a sudden they split that fee with us legally. So the landlord's essentially paying for you to be properly represented, which is pretty nice, saves the franchisor and franchisee. And the one thing I've learned, for every dollar that we've ever made in commission, we pride ourselves on making sure that we quadruple, and give a much higher return. I have my quiet goals for maximizing the savings. And with the pre-construction, it's voluntary, it's optional, and the GCs actually will compete, the four of them. They build in an administrative fee. It's on a line item for everybody to see transparently. There's no cost to the franchisee. But a GC looks at it this way. They just got a beautiful interior build out, and they build it into their profit, and it's a win-win for everybody. So nothing out of pocket, but best of class. And so I hope that's very helpful. And I'm just so grateful to be a part of your journey in owning your own business, and would love to get to know you and offer you a free consultation and see if we could add value in your journey.
Well, Scott, thanks so much for joining me today. And for those of you who have been watching this video, I know that you've found it extraordinarily valuable. This is one of several videos in the series, and I hope you'll go back and watch each one of them again. But I do hope that you'll reach out to Scott Simcik of FGP Commercial Leasing and the services that Scott's team offers, and you can find them at fgpcl.com. Scott, thanks for being with me today.